My name's Andy Butler. I am an artist, writer and a curator, and this is the work that I made for the exhibition collective Unease called The Agony and the Ecstasy. The Agony and the Ecstasy is a 2-channel video installation. It was filmed here in the Old Quad building, working with the Melbourne University Cheer and Dance Club, and also with some of the collection objects from the Ian Potter Museum collections. So I was interested in the long history of the university and how we carry the legacies of this sort of institution when we were a part of it. And what I was interested in was the values that were embedded in the objects within these collections. They were donated by prominent families associated with the university in a way to somehow leave a legacy for the future of the institution and for its students. It was really interesting working with the athletes and the cheerleading team. I feel like this work is ultimately about the sheer labour and athleticism and sweat and teamwork that goes into maintaining hope and optimism at a time of huge upheaval when it feels like everything's falling apart. I was also interested in what it meant for a generation of students to be graduating into the world, inheriting the climate crisis, rising economic inequality, rising political instability, and sort of what it means to enter the world at that moment. And so I guess I was interested in how it is that this sort of sport brings people together and can be a metaphor for this labour and teamwork that goes into this 2.5-minute routine that for me just embodies this over-the-top energy of hope and optimism. I have a personal connection to the Old Quad. I did my honours here in 2014 in philosophy. After having done my first 3 years of university at La Trobe, I arrived at the University of Melbourne doing my honours in this building, and I guess it spoke to the sort of power and economic inequality that's very much embedded within the University of Melbourne, and I feel like this building really speaks to that history, to that way that educational institutions can function to maintain inequality and power. And to me, this building really speaks to that history, given that it aspires to be like Oxford and Cambridge, two very elite institutions, that it was built at a time where Victoria was forming itself as a colony and it aspired to these old English values. And so the way that I wanted to respond to it was with a sport like cheerleading that is so energetic and bright and, I don't know, it has this sort of aesthetic that seems the complete opposite of the sort of stuffiness of somewhere like the Old Quad. Quite a few of my recent works have been a response to architecture. I've kind of landed on this particular trajectory of making video works that use the architecture and collections of cultural institutions as a backdrop for video works that deploy some sort of performative element or aesthetic. And for me, I'm someone who is really interested in the way that these sorts of institutions build values and worlds. They're going through such a period of huge upheaval and change and this attempt at social transformation. And for me, doing interventions within those architectural spaces is a way to really think about the complexities and contradictions of what happens when these spaces try and somehow shift and transform. I feel like within the arts, we're asking deep existential questions about how we're meant to exist within these colonial legacies, how we're meant to reimagine a public culture that can be more equitable. Before I ended up making art, I was embedded within these discourses with the sense that you needed to have an answer in terms of how to, fix all these problems that we've inherited. And I guess the reality is that I kind of don't have any answers to those to those questions. And I guess with art making, it's this beautiful medium where with all of these sorts of tools at your disposal, like space, sound, movement, color, you can bring them all together to hold these conceptual and emotional contradictions together and then just let the audience sit in it. And so art doesn't necessarily shift structures of power, but it can definitely generate new ways of thinking about how we should be responding to it, of how we might imagine a world otherwise than what we have. So I don't think art directly changes the world, but it definitely opens up the space to imagine something different.